For 21 years, Jack Mercer believed his wife was dead. He buried her name, raised their son alone, and learned how to survive the kind of silence that settles into a house after the person you love never comes home. Then, on a rain-soaked afternoon in Asheville, North Carolina, Jack looked across a crowded station and saw the woman he had mourned for half his life. She was older, thinner, terrified, and she wasn't alone. Beside her stood a young woman with the same steel-gray eyes Jack saw every morning in the mirror. What happened next would force one single father to question his marriage, his grief, and 21 years of memories he thought were real. Stay with this story, because sometimes the truth does more than bring the dead back. Sometimes it changes the living forever. If you're watching, like the video and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And standing there beneath the cold, fluorescent lights of the Asheville station, Jack Mercer realized there was one question even more frightening than how his dead wife could still be alive. What had happened to the life he believed they had shared? 21 years earlier, Jack had been 29 years old when a sheriff's deputy knocked on his front door just after midnight. Ryan was asleep upstairs. A cartoon nightlight painted soft blue stars across the hallway ceiling, and Jack remembered lowering the television because he was afraid the sound of voices at the door might wake his son. The deputy removed his hat before Jack opened the screen door. That was the first thing Jack remembered. Not the man's name, not the rain dripping from the porch roof, not even the words that came afterward. Just the hat held carefully against the deputy's chest. People only held hats like that when they had come to tell you something that would divide your life into before and after. "Mr. Mercer?" Jack nodded. "Is your wife Claire Mercer?" Jack's hand tightened around the edge of the door. "Yeah." The deputy glanced toward the dark staircase behind him. "Could we come inside?" Jack already knew. Some primitive part of him knew before the words arrived. His body understood what his mind refused to accept. Claire had left the house that afternoon saying she needed to drive toward Lake Lure to meet someone. She had kissed Ryan on the forehead while he sat on the kitchen floor building a wooden train track. She had kissed Jack beside the refrigerator. Nothing dramatic, nothing memorable. That was what haunted him later. The last kiss of their marriage had been ordinary. Jack had been holding a jar of mustard. Claire had smiled because he got some on his thumb. "You're impossible," she had said. "You married me. My first mistake." She had grinned when she said it. Then she picked up her purse, walked through the kitchen door, and disappeared from Jack's life. The deputies told him Claire's car had been found in the lake. It had burned before sinking. The remains inside had been badly damaged. Dental records had confirmed the identity. Jack stood in his own living room listening to words that seemed to be reaching him through several feet of water. Car, fire, lake, remains, confirmed. Claire. Every word belonged in the English language. Together, none of them made sense. "When can I see her?" The deputies exchanged a look. One of them spoke gently. "I don't think that's a good idea." Jack stared at him. "She's my wife." "I understand." "No, you don't. Mr. Mercer, I said she's my wife." His voice rose enough that Ryan began crying upstairs. Jack immediately stopped. The sound of his son's crying broke through whatever numbness had taken hold of him. He looked toward the staircase. One deputy lowered his eyes. Jack climbed the stairs because that was what fathers did when their children cried, even when their own world had just ended. Ryan was 3 years old. He stood inside his crib with wet cheeks and his blanket clenched beneath one arm. "Daddy!" Jack lifted him. Ryan wrapped his small legs around Jack's waist. "Mommy!" Jack closed his eyes. For the first time that night, his knees nearly gave out. He carried Ryan to the rocking chair near the window and sat with the boy against his chest. "Mommy coming home." Jack opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He could rebuild a transmission without instructions. He could diagnose an engine by listening to it idle for 30 seconds. He could pull a dent from a steel quarter panel until no one knew it had ever been damaged. But he did not know how to explain death to a 3-year-old. So he lied. Not because he wanted to, because the truth was too large to place inside such a small child. "Not tonight, buddy." Ryan accepted that answer. Children sometimes trusted words adults knew were impossible. He rested his head on Jack's shoulder. Within minutes, he was asleep again. Jack stayed in that chair until sunrise. He did not cry while holding Ryan. He waited until the boy woke, asked for cereal, and complained that Jack had used the wrong bowl. He waited until he poured milk. He waited until Ryan dropped his spoon. He waited until the ordinary morning had begun. Then he stepped into the pantry, closed the door, pressed both hands against a shelf, and collapsed. No one saw him. That became a pattern. 3 days later, Jack stood at Claire's funeral with Ryan beside him. The coffin remained closed. Claire's mother sat in the front row, surrounded by Whitmore relatives Jack barely knew and had never trusted. Victor Whitmore stood near the aisle in a dark suit, one hand resting politely on the shoulder of Claire's grieving mother. Victor had always looked as though he belonged in rooms with expensive furniture and people who lowered their voices when he entered. Jack had never liked him. The feeling had been mutual. When Claire first brought Jack to a Whitmore family dinner, Victor had asked him what kind of mechanic he was. Jack had answered, "The kind who fixes cars." Claire had nearly choked on her wine. Victor had not laughed. At the funeral, Victor approached Jack after most of the guests had left. Ryan was sitting on a stone wall nearby, swinging his legs. Victor glanced toward him. "You have family who can help." "I'll manage." "You shouldn't have to." "I said I'll manage." Victor studied him for a moment. Claire would have wanted Ryan provided for. Ryan is provided for. Jack. "I appreciate the concern." Victor's expression changed very slightly. Not anger. Something cooler. "You're proud." Jack looked toward the cemetery workers waiting near the trees. "No, I'm tired." Victor offered him a business card. Jack did not take it. Victor placed it inside the pocket of Jack's suit jacket himself. "If you change your mind." Jack removed the card the moment Victor walked away. He tore it in half. Then he stood beside Claire's grave until Ryan asked when they could go home. That question became the beginning of the next 21 years. Home. Home was no longer a place Jack returned to. It was something he had to rebuild. At first, people helped. Neighbors left casseroles on the porch. Women from Claire's church brought groceries. One of Jack's customers gave Ryan a box of toy cars. For 2 months, Jack heard the same sentence almost every day. "If you need anything, call." Then life moved on. It always did. The casseroles stopped. The phone grew quieter. Other people returned to their marriages, arguments, jobs, vacations, and Saturday mornings. Jack remained exactly where the tragedy had left him. With a 3-year-old son, a mortgage, a struggling repair shop, and an empty side of the bed he could not bring himself to sleep near. Ryan became the reason Jack kept moving. There was no grand moment when he decided to be strong. Strength came in smaller, less impressive forms. Setting an alarm for 6 because preschool opened at 7:30. Learning which detergent did not make Ryan's skin itch. Keeping crackers in the glove compartment because 3-year-olds became hungry without warning. Sewing a button onto a school shirt so badly that Ryan's teacher quietly fixed it later. Calling Claire's old hairdresser because he had no idea how to cut a child's hair without making him look ridiculous. The first time Ryan got sick after Claire died, Jack stayed awake for almost 30 hours. Ryan had a fever. Nothing dangerous, the doctor said. But Jack sat beside the bed anyway, one hand resting against the boy's back, counting every breath. Around 3 in the morning, Ryan woke. "Dad, I'm here. Don't go." Jack swallowed. "I won't." Ryan fell back asleep. Jack remained sitting there long after the fever broke. Years later, he would remember that night whenever someone praised him for raising Ryan alone. People made single fatherhood sound heroic when they looked backward at it. Living through it rarely felt heroic. Most of the time, it felt like being tired and doing the next thing anyway. Jack worked at a repair shop during the day and took private jobs in his garage at night. Ryan grew up surrounded by socket wrenches, shop towels, old radios, and the smell of gasoline. At 5, he could identify a Mustang. At 7, he knew not to touch anything Jack had placed on a red rag. At 9, he could hand Jack the correct wrench before Jack asked for it. Sometimes Ryan slept on an old couch in the corner of the garage while Jack worked. Jack would look over from beneath a car and see his son curled beneath a blanket, one sneaker still on. Then he would work another hour, because the electric bill was due, because school pictures cost money, because Ryan needed braces, because childhood never stopped sending invoices just because one parent had died. There were women over the years. Not many. Jack never took a vow to remain alone. He simply discovered that dating required a part of himself he did not know how to offer. One woman named Lisa stayed for almost a year. She was kind to Ryan. She liked old movies. She knew how Jack took his coffee. One evening, she stood in Jack's kitchen and asked whether Claire's coffee mug needed to remain beside the sink. Jack looked at the mug. White ceramic, small blue flowers, a chip along the rim. Claire had bought it at a roadside shop somewhere near Boone. Jack had never used it after she died. He had never thrown it away either. Lisa did not issue an ultimatum. She did not become angry. She only looked at Jack and understood something before he did. "You still live with her?" Jack wanted to deny it. He could not. Lisa left 2 weeks later. Ryan was 11. He did not ask questions. He simply helped Jack wash dishes after dinner. By the time Ryan entered high school, Mercer Classic Auto had become a real business. Jack bought a small building outside Asheville. The roof leaked. One bay door refused to close when temperatures dropped below freezing. The office smelled like dust and burnt coffee. Jack loved every inch of it. He restored classic American cars for collectors across the Carolinas. Mustangs, Chargers, old Chevrolets. A man once drove from Nashville because someone told him Jack Mercer could hear problems other mechanics needed computers to find. Jack never said he was gifted. He said engines were honest. If something was wrong, they told you. You just had to listen. People were harder. Ryan grew into a quiet, sharp-eyed young man who understood numbers the way Jack understood machines. He left for college in Atlanta. Jack helped him carry boxes into a dorm room. Ryan's roommate arrived with both parents. His mother fussed over the sheets. His father carried a television. Jack saw Ryan watching them. Only for a second, that was all. Jack pretended not to notice. Before leaving, he handed Ryan an envelope. Inside was enough cash for several months of food. Ryan frowned. "Dad, you need this." "I've got more." "You absolutely don't." Jack smiled. "Then I guess I better fix some cars." Ryan looked down. She should have been here. Jack knew exactly who he meant. Claire. They did not speak her name often, not because she was forgotten, because some names became heavier the longer you carried them. "Yeah," Jack said. "She should have." Ryan hugged him. It was the first time in years his son had done that without pretending it was a joke. After Ryan left, Jack drove 4 hours home alone. He stopped at a gas station outside Greenville and sat inside the truck without getting out. For 19 years, every major decision in his life had included Ryan. Suddenly, the passenger seat was empty. Jack looked through the windshield and realized he had completed the job Claire had left him with. Their son had grown up. He should have felt proud. He did. He also felt something frighteningly close to being unnecessary. That was when the garage became more than a business. Jack stayed late even when there was no need. He restored cars no customer had requested. He listened to baseball games on the radio. He ate sandwiches over the workbench. He returned to a quiet house only when he was tired enough to sleep. And that was the life he had built by the rainy afternoon when he saw Claire again. A manageable life. Not perfect, not happy in the way people used the word casually, but his, which was why sitting across from her inside the old storage building behind Mercer, Classic Auto felt less like a miracle than an invasion. Rain struck the metal roof above them. A bare bulb buzzed near the center of the room. Claire sat on a wooden chair with both hands wrapped around a paper cup Jack had given her. She had not taken a single drink. Emma stood near a shelf filled with old carburetors. Jack remained on the opposite side of the room. Distance felt necessary. He looked at Emma, then Claire, then Emma again. "How old are you?" Emma answered quietly. 20. Jack's eyes narrowed. She took a breath. 21 on Monday. He stared at Claire. His mind began calculating without permission. Dates, months, the last morning, the funeral. Claire saw the answer forming. "I didn't know," she said. Jack's voice was flat. "Didn't know that I was pregnant." The room went still. Emma looked down. Jack sat slowly on an overturned crate. There were moments when pain arrived as heat. This was not one of them. This felt cold, a slow cold moving through his ribs. "You were pregnant?" "Yes." "With her?" Claire nodded. Jack looked at Emma. The young woman had Claire's mouth. He saw it now, but the eyes were his. Steel gray. Ryan had inherited the same color. So had Jack's father. Emma rubbed 2 fingers along the edge of the shelf. Jack noticed the motion. He did the same thing when anxious. Ryan, too. He hated how much that small gesture affected him. "What did she tell you about your father?" Emma glanced at Claire, then answered, "That he died before I was born." Jack laughed once. The sound was empty. "So that's how you did it?" Claire looked confused. Jack gestured between himself and Emma. "Ryan grew up thinking his mother was dead. She grew up thinking her father was dead." Claire lowered her eyes. "You managed to bury both of us." Jack, "No." He stood. "You don't get to say my name like we're picking up an argument from yesterday." Emma looked toward the door. Jack saw it, the instinct to escape. He forced his voice lower. "This isn't your fault." Emma looked back at him. "I know." The answer surprised him. She was not fragile, not in the way he had expected. She studied him with the same suspicion he felt toward her. "You don't believe me," she said. Jack did not insult her with a lie. "I don't know what I believe." "Fair," Claire finally spoke. "You should test us." Jack turned. "What DNA?" Her answer came immediately. "No guessing. No trusting me. No trusting resemblance. Get proof." Jack had expected resistance. The absence of it unsettled him more. "Commercial test." "No." Claire's grip tightened around the coffee cup. "We use someone Rachel Lawson trusts." Jack stared at her. "You remember Rachel?" "I remember everyone." The words landed badly. Jack's expression changed. Claire understood. "That isn't what I meant." "You remember everyone. Jack. You remember the people you left." Emma stepped between the words before they became something worse. "Mom." Claire looked at her daughter. Emma spoke quietly. "Show him the picture." Claire hesitated, then reached inside her coat. She removed a photograph protected by a clear plastic sleeve. She placed it on the table. Jack picked it up. For several seconds he forgot to breathe. The photograph showed Ryan on his first day of kindergarten. A small backpack covered in cartoon dinosaurs hung from his shoulders. Jack was kneeling in front of him tying one shoelace. Ryan was laughing. Jack remembered that morning. He remembered Ryan refusing breakfast. He remembered Claire's absence feeling particularly sharp because other children arrived holding both parents' hands. Jack turned the photograph over. A date had been written on the back, 16 years earlier, 5 years after Claire's funeral. Jack looked at her. "Where did you get this?" "Thomas sent it." "Who is Thomas?" "Thomas Keene." Jack searched his memory, then found the face. Tall man, gray suits, always somewhere behind Claire's father at Whitmore gatherings. "Your father's security guy." "Yes." Jack looked at the photograph again. "Was he watching us?" "Protecting you." "That's not what I asked." Claire's silence answered him. Jack placed the photograph down carefully. How many what pictures?" Claire's eyes filled. "Over the years," Jack nodded. "Dozens." He stepped away from the table. Every instinct told him to shout. Instead, he walked toward the open doorway and stared into the rain. Behind him, Emma remained silent. Claire did not approach. Jack spoke without turning. "You watched my son grow up in photographs." "Yes." "And never called." "I tried." "Don't." "I did." "Don't tell me you tried unless you can explain why trying wasn't enough." Claire's voice shook. "I can." Jack turned around. "Then explain." She looked at Emma, then back at him. "This didn't start with the accident." Jack said nothing. Claire slowly removed another folder from her bag. Old papers, photocopies, financial records. The silver crest of Whitmore Meridian Group appeared on the corner of the first page. Jack recognized it. He had seen that symbol throughout the early years of their marriage, on invitations, letterheads, cars with drivers waiting outside expensive restaurants. Claire had spent years trying to escape that crest. Now it was sitting on Jack's work table. "My father built Whitmore Meridian," Claire said. "You know that." "I know he owned more companies than I could name. Logistics, manufacturing, property, pension management." Jack leaned against the table. "And Victor, my father gave him executive authority while he was sick." Claire opened the folder. "After Dad died, Victor kept it." Jack glanced at the documents. Numbers meant little to him, but even he recognized repeated transfers. millions moving between accounts. 3 weeks before I disappeared, I found money leaving employee retirement funds. How much? I didn't know then. And now, Claire looked at him. Hundreds of millions. Jack's face tightened. Emma had heard the story before. Her expression did not change. Claire continued. The money went through consulting companies that barely existed, then real estate partnerships, then offshore accounts. I found filings with my father's signature dated months after he was too sick to hold a pen. Jack looked at her. You were going to report Victor? Yes. Did he know? Not at first. Claire's fingers paused on the folder. Then I got careless. What happened? I printed documents at an office I thought was secure. She looked toward the rain. 2 days later, someone left an envelope on our porch. Jack frowned. Our porch? Claire nodded. She reached into the folder again. This time she removed an old photograph. Jack took it. Ryan was sitting on a playground swing, 3 years old, laughing. Jack stood behind him, pushing. The picture had been taken from a distance. Neither of them had known. Jack turned it over. 14 words had been written across the back. You have more to lose than money. Walk away while you still can. Jack stared at the sentence. The storage room seemed smaller. He looked toward Emma, then back at Claire. His voice was almost a whisper. That was before you disappeared. Claire nodded. The morning I decided I couldn't let Victor know where my family was anymore. Jack looked down at the photograph of himself and the little boy he had spent 21 years raising alone. And for the first time since seeing Claire at the station, his anger made room for something else. Fear. That was the first thing Jack felt that did not belong to the past. Not grief. Not anger. Fear. He stood inside the storage room with the old photograph in his hand, looking at an image of himself pushing 3-year-old Ryan on a swing, while someone watched from far enough away to remain invisible. The rain outside had softened, but water still tapped against the metal roof in slow, uneven beats. Jack turned the photograph over again. You have more to lose than money. Walk away while you still can. His thumb moved across the handwriting. Who took this? Claire shook her head. I never found out. Victor. Someone working for him. Jack looked up. That is not an answer. It is the only one I have. Emma sat quietly near the workbench. She had heard most of this before, but hearing her mother tell it to Jack changed the room. The story was no longer something that belonged to a hidden childhood. It had a witness now, a man who had lived on the other side of the lie. Jack placed the photograph on the table. Start at the beginning. Claire looked at him. The real beginning. She took a slow breath. Then she began. Thomas Keene came to the house the night after the photograph appeared. Jack remembered Thomas. Tall, broad shoulders, gray hair cut close. The kind of man who never raised his voice because he had spent his life around people who listened the first time. He had worked security for Claire's father for nearly 20 years. Henry Whitmore trusted almost no one. He trusted Thomas. Claire had once joked that Thomas probably knew more family secrets than the family itself. That night he arrived alone. No company car, no driver, no suit. Just a dark jacket wet from the rain. Claire had let him in through the kitchen. Ryan was asleep upstairs. Jack was still at the garage. Thomas looked around the room before speaking. Where is Jack? Working. Good. Claire frowned. Why is that good? Thomas placed a small device on the kitchen table, a radio scanner, then another, a compact signal detector. He walked through the house in silence. Claire followed. What are you doing? Checking. For what? He stopped near the telephone. For whatever Victor put here. Claire stared at him. Thomas unscrewed the base of the phone. Nothing. Then he checked the lamp beside the window. Nothing. He moved toward the den. Behind a framed photograph of Jack and Ryan, he found a small transmitter taped against the wall. Claire stopped breathing. Thomas removed it carefully. How long? I don't know. Victor did this. I cannot prove Victor touched it. Claire's voice hardened. Then stop speaking like one of his lawyers. Thomas looked at her. I know who ordered it. That was the moment Claire stopped thinking the photograph on the porch had been a warning. It was surveillance. Thomas put the device into a metal case and closed it. Your uncle knows you found the pension accounts. Claire sat down. How does it matter? Yes. No. His answer was immediate. What matters is that he knows. Claire looked toward the staircase. Ryan's bedroom was above them. Does he know I copied the files? Probably. Does he know where they are? No. Then I take them to federal investigators tonight. Thomas shook his head. You already contacted someone. Claire stared at him. How do you know? Because the man you called was transferred this afternoon. Her face changed. Thomas leaned closer. Claire, you are still thinking this is a company problem. It is fraud. It stopped being fraud the moment Victor photographed your husband and child. She looked toward the staircase again. Thomas lowered his voice. Your father knew Victor was dangerous. My father trusted him. No. Claire looked back. Thomas seemed reluctant to continue. Then he did. Your father used him. Claire's expression hardened. That is not true. Henry trusted Victor to do ugly things because Henry did not want to know how they were done. Claire stood. My father was not Victor. I did not say he was. Then what are you saying? I am saying powerful families survive by telling themselves they are different from the people who protect their power. Claire stared at him. Thomas had known Henry longer than almost anyone, long enough to speak about him without reverence. Before your father died, he made me promise something. Claire said nothing. Thomas looked directly at her. He said if Victor ever came after you, I was to protect you from the family. Claire gave a bitter laugh. Protect me how? Thomas did not answer immediately. That silence frightened her more than anything he could have said. Thomas, you disappear. Claire stared at him. What? You leave tonight. No. You take nothing Victor can trace, no credit cards, no car, no phone. No. You stay gone until I can move the evidence somewhere safe. Claire stepped back. My husband is coming home in an hour. Then you need to be gone before he gets here. She shook her head. No. Thomas remained calm. Jack cannot know. Absolutely not. If Jack knows, Victor will know. You do not know that. Victor will watch him. Claire looked toward the family photographs on the wall. Then Jack comes with me. And Ryan. Both. Thomas shook his head. The moment the three of you disappear together, Victor knows you are alive and running. I do not care. You will when he finds you. Claire stared at him. Thomas's voice softened. The safest husband is a grieving husband. The words disgusted her. No. Claire, no. The safest child is a child whose father has no secret to betray. She turned away. I will not do that to them. Thomas stepped closer. If Victor believes you are alive, he will never stop looking. I said no. If he believes you are dead, he has no reason to hurt Jack. Claire looked at him. Thomas continued. I can make Victor believe it. The room seemed to tilt. Claire understood before Thomas explained. Her car, the lake, a body, records, a death convincing enough to survive legal scrutiny. She backed away. You are insane. Probably. I'm not doing this. Thomas did not argue. He only placed another photograph on the kitchen table. Ryan outside preschool. Taken that morning. Claire stared at it. Then another. Jack standing outside the garage. Another. Jack buying coffee. Another. Ryan walking beside a teacher. Each photograph had been taken from a different angle, different day, different distance. Victor was not threatening what he could do. He was showing Claire what he had already done. Thomas gathered the photographs. Your father knew there might come a day when Victor stopped respecting boundaries. Claire looked at him. What did Dad tell you? Thomas paused, then answered. If that day came, I was to choose you over the company. Claire's eyes filled. And you think choosing me means making my family believe I am dead. I think choosing you means keeping them breathing. Jack stood in the present motionless as Claire told him the story. He had forgotten the rain, forgotten the cold coffee sitting beside him. Every detail created another version of the night he remembered. He had come home shortly after 10. Claire was gone. There had been a note on the kitchen counter saying she needed air and would be back soon. Jack had read that note hundreds of times after her death. He had memorized it. Now he understood why the handwriting had looked rushed. Was the note real? Claire nodded. I wrote it. Jack's jaw tightened. You knew I would read it. Yes. You knew I would wait. Yes. How long did you think I would wait? Claire did not answer. Jack looked away. Emma watched him carefully. Claire continued. Thomas had less than 24 hours. He used contacts from decades of private security work. A burned, unidentified body had been recovered in another county after an industrial fire. No family had claimed it. No identity had been established. Thomas learned that one of the people controlling the records had worked for a company connected to Victor. The same system Victor used to hide crimes could be turned against him. Dental files were substituted. A car matching Claire's was driven toward Lake Lure. It was pushed into the water and set on fire. The body was placed inside. Claire's identity entered the official record. The lie became legal. Jack interrupted. Whose body? Claire looked at him. I never knew her name. Jack's expression darkened. You let me bury someone. I did not know there would be a funeral. What did you think people do when their wife dies? Claire lowered her eyes. Jack turned away. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Then Emma asked softly, Did you ever find out who she was? Claire looked at her daughter. No. Emma absorbed that. Jack did too. It made the lie uglier. There had been another person inside it. Someone with no family at the funeral. Someone whose name had disappeared so Claire's could survive. Claire continued more quietly. Thomas drove her out of North Carolina that night. No suitcase, no phone, no goodbye. Claire sat in the passenger seat of an old sedan wearing clothes Thomas bought at a grocery store outside Knoxville. For 2 days, they moved between motels. Then Thomas left her alone in one outside the city. He promised to return with documents. Instead, he sent a woman Claire had never met, a nurse. She brought cash, an identification card, and instructions. Claire was sick that morning. The nurse assumed it was stress. By evening, Claire knew it was not. She walked alone to a pharmacy 3 blocks away. She bought a pregnancy test with cash. Back inside the motel bathroom, she stared at 2 pink lines beneath a buzzing fluorescent light. For several minutes, she could not move. She sat on the edge of the bathtub, then on the floor. Her first thought was Jack. Her second was Ryan. Her third was that she had just made both of them mourn a woman who was carrying another child. Claire reached for the motel phone. She knew Jack's number by memory. She pressed the first 6 digits, then stopped. Outside the window, an unfamiliar sedan sat beneath the parking lot light. The same car had been there the night before. Maybe coincidence, maybe not. Claire hung up. She stayed awake until morning with one hand over her stomach. I hated you, she told Jack in the present. He looked at her. For what? For being safe. The answer surprised him. Claire's eyes filled. You were home. Ryan was home. You were together. And I was carrying a baby in a motel room where I did not know if someone was waiting outside to kill me. Jack's voice remained quiet. I was planning your funeral. I know. No, you know now. Claire did not defend herself. Jack looked at Emma. She stood with her arms folded tightly. When did you tell her about me? Claire answered. 2 weeks ago. Jack stared at her. Emma stepped in. I knew my father was supposedly dead, that was all. Supposedly. Emma gave him a tired look. That word changed recently. Jack looked back at Claire. For 20 years you told her I was dead. Claire nodded. I thought telling her the truth would make her search for you. She deserved to know. I know. You keep saying that. Because I do. Jack laughed quietly. No. You understand it now because you are standing in front of the people who paid for your decisions. Claire flinched. Emma looked away. Jack immediately regretted the words, not because they were untrue, because Emma had heard them. Claire continued anyway. She moved first to Virginia, then Tennessee, then Ohio, then north. Names changed, addresses changed, jobs changed. Claire became a bookkeeper, a hotel clerk, a receptionist, a substitute teacher. She learned never to become too memorable, never to tell neighbors too much, never to use her real birthday, never to stay in photographs if she could avoid it. Thomas contacted her through rented mailboxes and coded messages. At first, every few months, he sent photographs. Jack with Ryan, Ryan at school, Jack outside the garage, Ryan playing baseball. One picture showed Ryan missing his front teeth. Claire kept it for years. Another showed him standing beside Jack holding a socket wrench. Claire had cried so hard that night Emma, still a toddler, woke and found her sitting on the kitchen floor. "Why didn't you come back then?" Jack asked. Claire looked at him. "I tried." He did not move. "Tell me." When Emma was 6, Claire contacted Thomas and said she could not continue. She wanted to return. Thomas agreed. He had moved portions of the evidence to locations Victor could not easily reach. He believed Victor had become less focused on Claire. A plan was created. Claire would return through federal counsel outside North Carolina. Jack would be contacted only after Claire and Emma were protected. 3 days before the first meeting, Thomas disappeared. No body, no arrest, no message. Every number Claire had used to reach him went dead. One rented mailbox was emptied, another had been burned, a third was being watched. Claire panicked. She took Emma and ran again. Jack looked at Emma. "You remember that?" Emma nodded. "Bits." She leaned against the table. "Mom told me we were moving because of work. We left before breakfast. I remember being angry because I had a birthday party that weekend." Claire closed her eyes. Emma continued. "I thought that was the worst thing happening." Jack looked down. Children always remembered the small thing, the missed party, the wrong bowl, the empty chair. Claire eventually settled near the coast of Maine. She used the name Claire Hale. Emma became Emma Hale. For several years, life almost felt normal. They rented a small house. Emma attended public school. Claire worked remotely doing bookkeeping for a shipping company. She stopped seeing unfamiliar cars outside, stopped changing routes to the grocery store, stopped checking beneath the car every morning. Fear became quieter. Then silence became easier. That was the part Claire did not try to excuse. "I could have kept looking for another way." Jack stared at her. "Yes. I could have trusted someone. Yes. I could have found you. Yes." Every answer hurt. Claire looked down at her hands. "After 10 years, I did not know what I would say." Jack's voice hardened. "You say hello." Claire looked up. "You say I am alive." He stepped closer. "You say Ryan has a sister." Claire's eyes filled. "You say I am sorry." Her voice broke. "I was ashamed." Jack stared at her. Claire wiped at one tear. "At first I was terrified Victor would hurt you. Then I was terrified you would hate me. After enough time passed, I did not know which fear was controlling me anymore." Jack looked away. For that first time, Claire's explanation did not sound like a conspiracy. It sounded human. That made it harder. Before he could answer, tires rolled over gravel outside. Everyone turned. A car door slammed. Jack's body stiffened. Emma stepped closer to Claire. Another door closed. Then someone knocked against the metal frame. "Jack." Jack exhaled. "Ryan." He stepped outside. Ryan Mercer stood in the rain wearing dark slacks and a wrinkled button-down shirt, one hand still holding his car keys. He was taller than Jack by an inch. Same gray eyes, same habit of tightening his jaw when worried. Ryan looked past him. "What happened?" Jack said nothing. Ryan frowned. "You called me at work and told me to drive 3 hours because you needed me." "I called 6 times." "I know." "Then tell me what is going on." Jack looked toward the storage room. Ryan followed his eyes. Claire stood in the doorway. Ryan stopped. His keys slipped from his hand. They hit the concrete. Nobody moved to pick them up. Ryan's face emptied. Not disbelief. Recognition. He had seen Claire's face hundreds of times. In photographs Jack kept hidden in a drawer. In the wedding picture Ryan found once when he was 12. In the framed photograph from before the accident that used to sit beside Jack's bed. Claire took one step forward. "Ryan." His expression changed instantly. "Don't." Claire stopped. Ryan stared at her, then looked at Jack. "What is this?" Jack swallowed. "She is Claire." Ryan shook his head. "No." Ryan. "No." He stepped backward. "She is dead." Claire's voice trembled. "I know what you were told." Ryan turned toward her. "What I was told—" His voice rose. "Who are you?" Claire did not answer with a story. "I am your mother." Ryan stared at her. Then he laughed once. It sounded too much like Jack had earlier. Absolutely not. He turned toward Jack. Did she ask you for money? No. Did she contact you online? No. How long has this been going on? I saw her today. Ryan looked between them. Then he noticed Emma. Who is she? Emma stood straighter. Claire opened her mouth. Jack answered first. Her name is Emma. Ryan frowned. Jack continued. Claire says she is my daughter. Ryan went completely still. For a moment, Jack thought he might leave. Instead, Ryan walked inside. He stood about 10 feet from Claire. His hands were shaking. You were alive? Claire nodded. Yes. All this time. Yes. Ryan looked toward the floor, then back. Where were you when he worked nights? Claire could not answer. Ryan pointed toward Jack. When I was 6, he slept in the garage because he took enough jobs to keep the house. Ryan. No, Dad. His eyes remained on Claire. Where were you when I broke my arm? Claire's lips parted. Where were you when I graduated? I'm sorry. Where were you when every other kid had a mother sitting in the stands? Claire's face collapsed. I am sorry. Stop saying that. Ryan's voice cracked. That does not give him 20 years back. Jack looked away. That does not give me anything back. Claire nodded. I know. Ryan stared at her. Then Emma moved slightly. Ryan looked at her. Something in his expression changed. Not anger, pain. So you got her. Emma's face tightened. What? You had her. Emma understood. You think I won? Ryan said nothing. Emma stepped closer. I spent my entire life believing my father was dead. Ryan's eyes narrowed. At least you had one parent. So did you. The words struck him. Emma immediately regretted how they sounded. Jack stepped forward. Enough. But Ryan looked at Emma differently now, not as an intruder, as another person standing inside the same wreckage. Emma's voice softened. I did not know about you. Ryan looked down. I did not know about you either. Silence settled between them. Claire reached into her bag. There is another reason I came back now. Jack looked at her. What reason could be bigger than this? Claire placed a thick folder on the table. On the front was the Whitmore Meridian crest. Ryan recognized it immediately. What is that? Your grandfather's trust. Jack folded his arms. Claire opened the document. Henry Whitmore had controlled 51% of the voting shares in Whitmore Meridian. Before his death, he placed those shares into a family trust. Victor was named temporary steward, but only under one condition. Claire was legally dead and had no biological heir old enough to claim control. Ryan looked toward Emma. Claire continued. Emma turns 21 Monday. Ryan frowned. So at 21, the trust transfers voting control to my biological child. Jack stared at her. 51%? Claire nodded. Enough to control the company. Emma looked uncomfortable. I do not want the company. This is not about wanting it, Claire said. She turned several pages. Your birthday also triggers a mandatory forensic audit. Ryan stepped closer. Now the forensic accountant in him took over. Of what? Every pension account and controlled subsidiary. Ryan looked at the pages. Victor knows. Yes. And he has how long? Until midnight Sunday. Ryan began reading. Claire continued. Victor is trying to sell several major divisions to an overseas investment group before the trust changes control. Ryan looked up. Move the assets before the audit. Exactly. Where is the original? Claire went silent. Jack noticed. Claire, I have a copy. Ryan's expression hardened. A copy will not survive a corporate challenge. I know. Then where is the original? Claire reached into the folder and removed a small digital recorder. Thomas hid it before he disappeared. Jack stared at the recorder. How do you know? Because 3 weeks ago, an attorney in Richmond contacted me. Thomas had left instructions with his estate. A recording was to be delivered when he was legally declared dead. Claire pressed play. Static filled the room. Then a man's older voice. Thomas Keene. If you are hearing this, I did not finish what I promised Henry. Claire closed her eyes. The recording continued. The original trust is still in North Carolina. Victor does not have it. I made sure of that. A pause. If Claire comes home, tell her Henry's truth sleeps inside what Jack refused to throw away. The recording ended. Jack stared at the device. Ryan looked at him. What does that mean? Jack did not answer. His eyes moved toward the office across the garage, then toward the back wall. He was already walking. Claire followed. Jack. He crossed the garage floor past the unfinished Mustang and pushed open his office door. In the far corner, beneath an old shop calendar, was the place where a wooden mechanic's chest had sat for more than 2 decades. Claire had given it to him on the day Mercer Classic Auto first opened. Jack had refused to replace it even after the hinges rusted and the finish wore away. Now the corner was empty. Jack stopped. Ryan nearly walked into him. What? Jack pointed. It was there this morning. Claire's face went pale. Jack moved toward the back storage room. The lock had been forced. The door opened with one hard pull. Tools were scattered across the floor. Shelves had been emptied. A wooden box lay on its side near the wall. Jack recognized it instantly. His old mechanic's chest. Ryan picked it up. Someone searched it. Jack looked behind the place where the box had fallen. Black paint covered the concrete wall. 5 words had been written in large, uneven letters. The dead should stay buried. Claire stared at the message. Emma took 1 step backward. Jack's fear disappeared. Something colder replaced it. He walked to the wall, touched the still tacky paint with 1 finger, then looked at Claire. Call Rachel. Claire blinked. What? Jack wiped the paint onto an old rag. You said you needed someone Victor does not own. He looked toward Ryan, then Emma, then back at Claire. We start with someone I trust. Rachel Lawson arrived at Mercer Classic Auto 40 minutes later wearing courtroom clothes beneath a raincoat and carrying the expression of a woman who had already decided she was going to dislike whatever Jack was about to tell her. She stepped through the garage door, looked at the broken lock, the scattered tools, and the words painted across the concrete wall. The dead should stay buried. Rachel stopped. Then she turned toward Jack. Please tell me this is some kind of stupid joke. Jack leaned against the workbench. I wish it was. Rachel had known Jack since high school. She had watched him marry Claire. She had stood beside him at the funeral. She had helped him settle insurance claims after the accident and had once threatened a collections agency that refused to stop calling while Ryan was sick. There were very few people Jack trusted without condition. Rachel was one of them. She looked toward Claire. For several seconds, neither woman spoke. Rachel's face changed slowly. Recognition came first, then disbelief, then anger. Claire nodded. Hi, Rachel. Rachel stared at her. No. Jack almost smiled. Not because anything was funny, because that had been his first reaction too. Rachel stepped closer. You are dead. Claire gave a tired answer. Legally. Rachel turned toward Jack. You knew about this since this afternoon. And you called me now? I have been busy finding out I have a daughter. Rachel looked toward Emma. Emma stood near Ryan with both arms folded. Rachel closed her eyes for 1 long second. When she opened them again, the lawyer had replaced the friend. All right. She removed her coat. Nobody speaks to police. Nobody signs anything. Nobody posts anything online. Nobody calls anyone connected to the Whitmores unless I approve it. Ryan raised a hand slightly. I already searched public corporate records. Rachel looked at him. Of course you did. Jack pointed toward the old toolbox. Thomas Keene hid something in there. Rachel walked over. Ryan explained the recording. He repeated the clue about Henry's truth sleeping inside what Jack refused to throw away. Rachel crouched beside the toolbox. Did whoever broke in take anything? We don't know. Ryan lifted the box onto the table. Its drawers were empty. Someone had searched every compartment. He ran his fingers beneath the wooden base, then stopped. What? Jack asked. Ryan knocked lightly against the bottom. The sound was wrong, too hollow. He turned the box over. The base was thicker than the dimensions required. Ryan picked up a screwdriver. Jack watched him pry at a seam almost invisible beneath years of oil and dust. A thin panel lifted. Inside rested a small velvet pouch. Claire covered her mouth. Jack looked at her. You know what it is? She nodded. Ryan opened the pouch. An antique gold pocket watch slid into his palm. The surface was scratched. The initials HW were engraved across the back. Claire whispered, "My father's." Jack remembered it. Henry Whitmore had carried the watch everywhere. He used to place it on the dinner table during family gatherings and check the time whenever Victor talked too long. Ryan pressed the release. The watch opened. No document, no folded paper. Only a small brass key and a strip of paper containing a string of numbers. Jack frowned. That is it. Ryan studied the numbers. Maybe. Rachel moved beside him. Account number looks like one. For what? Ryan took out his phone. I can find out. Rachel gave him a sharp look. Legally. Ryan glanced at her. I was planning on it. 40 minutes later, he had enough. The number belonged to a safe deposit account at a private bank in Charlotte. The account had been opened under a Whitmore family trust more than 30 years earlier. It had been frozen on the date Claire Mercer was legally declared dead. Rachel looked at the brass key. That is probably the box key. Claire sat down. Thomas wanted us to find it. Rachel nodded. Maybe. Jack heard the doubt. What? Rachel placed the key on the table. A safe deposit box is not proof. Claire looked up. If the original trust is inside it. If... Rachel closed the toolbox. And if Victor has been searching for the same document for 21 years, filing to open that box could tell him exactly where we are looking. Jack glanced at the words on the wall. I think he already knows. Rachel looked at him. Then we move fast. She filed an emergency petition before midnight. The request argued that Claire Mercer was alive, that the identity used in the original death record was potentially fraudulent, and that property connected to Henry Whitmore's estate might contain evidence relevant to an active inheritance dispute. Rachel expected resistance. She got more than resistance. By 8 the next morning, a photograph of Jack standing beside Claire outside the Asheville station appeared on a local news website. By 9, the same picture was on television. By 10, the headline had changed. Local mechanic linked to Whitmore heiress impersonation claim. Jack stood beneath the television in the garage office while a reporter described Claire as an unidentified woman claiming to be the late Claire Whitmore Mercer. A second photograph showed Emma leaving the station. The reporter called her alleged heir. Jack switched off the television. Ryan looked at his phone. That went national fast. Rachel stood beside the desk. Victor has public relations firms. Jack stared at the black screen. Of course he does. The first cancellation came 15 minutes later. A collector from Raleigh called about a Corvette Jack had spent 6 months restoring. The man's voice was apologetic. I'm not accusing you of anything, Jack. Jack sat behind the desk. Then do not cancel. A pause. My partners are nervous. Your partners have never met me. I know. You paid me to restore a car. I know. Then let me finish the car. Another pause. I am sorry. The call ended. Jack placed the phone down. By lunch, 3 more customers canceled. A supplier suddenly wanted unpaid invoices settled immediately. The garage's insurance carrier emailed notice of a special review. Then 2 police cruisers pulled into the lot. Jack watched them from the open bay door. Rachel moved beside him. Do not say anything unnecessary. One officer approached. We received information that stolen Whitmore corporate property may be stored here. Jack looked at Rachel. She answered for him. Do you have a warrant? The officer produced one. Jack read the address. His own name, his own business, his own life reduced to paper carrying someone else's accusation. The police searched the office, the storage room, the shelves. They photographed the toolbox. They took copies of documents Rachel had already secured. Employees from neighboring shops stood outside pretending not to watch. Jack said nothing. He had spent 21 years building a reputation one honest repair at a time. Victor was pulling it apart in a morning. After the police left, Jack walked into the garage. A familiar blue Corvette was waiting near the entrance. Its owner, Harold Benton, stood beside it. Harold had been coming to Jack for 15 years. Jack wiped his hands on a rag. Something wrong with the engine? Harold looked uncomfortable. No. Jack already knew. You are taking it. My wife saw the news. Jack nodded slowly. Harold stepped closer. I believe you. Jack looked at him. Harold lowered his voice. But I cannot have my company's name connected to this. Jack stared at the car. He had rebuilt the transmission the previous winter. Keys are in the office. Harold hesitated. Jack, it's fine. It isn't personal. Jack looked at him. That is usually what people say when it is. Harold lowered his eyes. 10 minutes later, the Corvette rolled out of the garage. Jack watched until the taillights disappeared. Claire stood several feet behind him. I am sorry. Jack did not turn. Stop saying that. She fell silent. That afternoon, a black sedan pulled into the lot. No security vehicle followed, no assistance. Victor Whitmore stepped out alone. He wore a charcoal coat and polished shoes that looked absurd against the oil-stained concrete. Jack saw him enter and felt his entire body tighten. Victor glanced around the garage. Half-restored cars, tool cabinets, old photographs, a framed picture of Ryan at graduation. So this is where you built your empire. Jack said nothing. Victor smiled. I expected something larger. Jack walked toward him. Get out. Victor removed his gloves slowly. I came to help. Rachel stepped out of the office. You came without counsel. Victor looked at her. Rachel Lawson. Victor, I always admired your confidence. I always admired your ability to confuse money with character. Victor smiled. Then he looked at Jack. May we speak privately? No. Victor reached inside his coat. Rachel moved slightly. He removed an envelope. Nothing more. He placed it on the workbench. Jack did not touch it. What is that? An ending. Jack looked at Victor. Victor opened the envelope. Inside was a cashier's check. $20 million. Emma stood in the doorway behind Jack. She could see the number. Victor spoke calmly. Sign a statement that the woman calling herself Claire Whitmore Mercer is not your wife. Jack stared at the check. That is all. Also state that Emma Hale is not your biological daughter. Emma's face hardened. Rachel stepped forward. This conversation is over. Victor ignored her. He kept his eyes on Jack. $20 million. Jack said nothing. Victor looked around the garage. You can pay every debt attached to this place. He gestured toward the empty bay where Harold's Corvette had been. You can replace every customer who leaves. Jack's jaw tightened. Victor knew exactly where to press. You can give Ryan security. Jack looked at him. Victor lowered his voice. And you can stop sacrificing yourself for a woman who did not sacrifice herself for you. Claire stood near the office doorway. She heard every word. Victor continued. She had 21 years to come home. Jack's hand tightened around the edge of the workbench. Do not talk about her. Why not? Victor glanced toward Claire. She seems willing to talk about herself. Jack did not move. Victor stepped closer. She left you with a child. Claire's face went pale. She let you bury a stranger. Jack looked at the check again. $20 million. He could save the garage. He could stop the reporters. He could stop the calls. He could walk away from the entire Whitmore nightmare. And beneath those practical thoughts lived something uglier. He could hurt Claire. One signature. One public statement. He could make her feel one small fraction of what 21 years of silence had done to him. Victor saw the hesitation. She chose to leave you, Jack. Jack looked up. Victor spoke gently now. I did not take your wife from you. Claire lowered her eyes. Jack's anger moved through him like electricity. Victor pushed the check forward. Take your life back. Jack looked toward Emma. She was trying to appear unaffected. She failed. Her fingers pressed against the doorframe. That familiar habit, his habit, Ryan's habit. Jack looked back at Victor. Victor sighed. Emma Grace Hale does not belong in this mess. Jack became still. Claire looked up. Ryan turned from the office. Rachel's eyes sharpened. Jack spoke slowly. What did you call her? Victor did not answer. Jack stepped closer. Her middle name. Victor's expression changed almost imperceptibly. Emma whispered, I never told him that. Jack looked at Claire. Did you? No. Rachel answered next. I did not. Jack turned back toward Victor. How do you know her full name? Victor buttoned his coat. Jack stepped between him and the exit. How long have you known she exists? Victor's calm returned. Move. How long? Jack, you were watching her. Victor said nothing. That was enough. Jack picked up the check. For 1 second, Victor seemed satisfied. Then Jack tore it in half. The paper resisted. He tore it again and again. He dropped the pieces at Victor's feet. "Get out of my garage." Victor stared at him. "You are making a mistake." Jack pointed toward the door. Victor looked at Emma, then Claire, then Jack. "People always think truth protects them." Jack said nothing. Victor stepped outside. The black sedan disappeared down the road. Only after it was gone did Jack realize his hands were shaking. Emma spoke quietly. "You almost took it?" Jack turned. She was not accusing him. That made it worse. "Yes." Claire looked at him. Jack did not hide behind pride. "For a second I wanted to." Emma asked why. Jack looked toward Claire. "Because $20 million was not the part that tempted me." Claire understood. She lowered her eyes. Rachel broke the silence. "We still need proof." Jack nodded. "Set up the test." The DNA collection was done that evening in a private medical office belonging to one of Rachel's former clients. No public intake system, no insurance record, no commercial database. Jack and Emma sat across from each other while the technicians sealed their samples. Neither spoke. 2 days later, Rachel brought the result to the garage in a plain envelope. Jack took it. He did not open it. Emma found him 10 minutes later sitting beside the unfinished Mustang. The envelope rested in his hands. "You have not looked." "No." She leaned against the car. "Are you afraid I am not your daughter?" Jack looked at her. "No." Emma waited. Jack looked down at the envelope. "I'm afraid you are." Her expression softened. He continued. "If this says no, then I lose a stranger I met 3 days ago." He swallowed. "If it says yes, then I lost 21 years. Emma sat beside him. Neither moved. Finally, she took the envelope. "Can I?" Jack nodded. She opened it. Her eyes moved across the page, then stopped. Jack did not ask. He already knew. Emma handed him the paper. Probability of paternity greater than 99.99%. Jack stared at the number. Emma watched him. "What am I supposed to call you?" Jack folded the paper carefully. "You do not owe me anything." "I know." "Then call me Jack until you want something else." Emma nodded. "Okay." That night, Victor contacted her directly, a single message. "Your mother has not told you everything." Emma did not respond. A second message arrived. Ask her why she refused federal protection. Emma stared at the screen. She told no one. The following afternoon, she walked into the Whitmore Grand Hotel in Charlotte and met Victor in a quiet lounge above the lobby. He placed documents between them. Official forms, federal seals, Claire's signature. Emma read every page. 20 years earlier, Claire had been offered entry into a formal protection program. She had declined. Emma looked up. "Why are you showing me this?" Victor folded his hands. "Because you deserve to know the difference between being trapped and choosing not to leave." Emma stood. "You threatened her." Victor did not deny it. "I did many things." His honesty unsettled her. "But your mother had exits she never told you about." Emma left without another word. She confronted Claire that evening. Jack and Ryan were both present. Emma threw the copies onto the table. "What is this?" Claire saw the signature. Her face changed. Jack picked up the document. "You were offered protection." Claire nodded. Jack stared at her. "You said there was no safe way back." "There was no way I trusted." Emma stepped closer. "That is not the same thing." Claire looked at her daughter. "The program required me to surrender everything. The evidence. Everything. Documents, names, control over where we lived, who I contacted." Emma's voice sharpened. "So you said no." "I believed Victor had people inside the investigation." "Believed." Claire hesitated. That hesitation hurt more than an answer. Emma stepped back. "You made every choice for me. I was trying to protect you." "That is what everyone in this family says when they want control." Claire went silent. Jack felt the words hit him too. He had wanted Emma hidden from the board meeting. He had wanted decisions made for her. Protection could become possession faster than people admitted. Ryan spent that night working, not sleeping, working. By morning, he found something buried inside old records connected to Thomas Keene, mail forwarding contracts, storage payments, security company invoices. He traced one address to a warehouse outside Greensboro. then another, then dozens of package entries. Ryan drove there with Rachel. Inside a rented unit, they found plastic bins filled with unopened letters. Every envelope carried Claire's handwriting. Everyone was addressed to Jack or Ryan. Everyone had been intercepted. Ryan sat on the concrete floor surrounded by 20 years of messages that had never arrived. He opened the final letter. The date was 1 week before Thomas disappeared. Claire had written only 3 pages. Near the end, one sentence stopped him. "I am coming home. Whatever happens next, my children deserve the truth." Ryan read it twice, then folded the letter. His anger remained, but it no longer had the same shape. Rachel's phone rang. The bank had received the court order. The safe deposit box would be opened that afternoon. They met in Charlotte before closing. Jack stood beside Claire, Emma beside Ryan. Rachel placed the brass key on the counter. A bank officer led them into a private room. The metal box was carried in. Jack stared at it. 21 years of lies had narrowed to one lock. The officer inserted the key. The lid opened. Inside sat a single envelope. Claire reached for it. Empty. Nothing. Emma closed her eyes. Ryan looked deeper into the box. There is something else. He removed a photograph. A security image. The timestamp was 11 years old. It showed a man standing inside the same vault. He held the original envelope in one hand. Claire recognized him first. Daniel Cross. Jack looked at her. "Who is Daniel Cross?" Ryan answered. "The chief financial officer of Whitmore Meridian." Rachel stared at the photograph. Emma's 21st birthday was now less than 18 hours away. Daniel Cross had removed the original trust 11 years earlier, and he was still sitting 3 offices away from Victor Whitmore. Ryan stared at the photograph beneath the bank's white fluorescent lights. The image was grainy, but the face was clear enough. Daniel stood inside the vault wearing a dark suit, one hand holding the same envelope they had just found empty. The timestamp in the corner read 2:14 p.m., October 18th, 11 years ago. Rachel took the photograph from Ryan. "Why would the bank keep this?" "Private vault access logs," Ryan said. "Some institutions archive images with entry records." Jack looked at Claire. "You know him. Since I was a teenager." "Trust him." Claire gave a tired laugh. "I stopped trusting people with Whitmore offices a long time ago." Ryan leaned closer to the photograph. "Daniel has been chief financial officer for almost 15 years. Rachel looked at him. "Which means if Victor moved hundreds of millions through company accounts, Daniel either knew or should have known." "Exactly." Emma stood near the far end of the table. "What if he gave the document to Victor?" Nobody answered, because it was possible. Jack looked at the clock on the wall. 6:23, Sunday evening, less than 6 hours until Emma turned 21. Rachel placed the photograph into her legal folder. "We need Daniel." Ryan looked up. "How?" "We call him. And if Victor monitors his phone," Rachel paused, "then we do not call." Claire seemed to remember something. "Daniel still goes to St. Matthew's on Sundays." Jack looked at her. "You know that after 21 years, my father hired him out of a regional accounting firm. Daniel's wife was Catholic. They went every week." Ryan checked his phone. "Evening service ends at 7. Rachel looked at the address. "Charlotte." Jack picked up his coat. "We are already in Charlotte." Emma straightened. "I am coming." Jack looked at her. "No." Her expression changed immediately. "Jack, this man may be involved with Victor, which means he may know something about me. That does not make it safe." Emma stared at him. Jack recognized the look. He had seen it on Ryan 100 times. The moment a child realizes a parent has mistaken fear for authority. "You met me 3 days ago," Emma said. Jack did not answer. "You do not get to spend 3 days being my father and decide where I'm allowed to go." Claire lowered her eyes. The words had found more than one target. Emma continued. "Everyone keeps saying they are protecting me." Jack opened his mouth. She stopped him. "Mom protected me by lying. Victor protected the company by stealing. You want to protect me by making the decision for me." Jack stood very still. Ryan looked away. Rachel said nothing. Emma's voice softened. "If I am old enough to inherit 51% of a company at midnight, I am old enough to sit in a car outside a church." Jack looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded once. "Fine." Emma blinked. "Fine. You come." She seemed almost disappointed that the argument ended so quickly. Jack pulled on his coat. "But you stay close." Emma nodded. "That I can agree to." They drove across Charlotte in 2 cars. Sunday traffic moved beneath a darkening sky. Jack drove his truck with Emma in the passenger seat. Claire sat behind them. No one spoke for several minutes. The city lights blurred across the windshield. Emma finally looked toward Jack. "You are mad at me." "No. You look mad. I always look like this." Claire spoke from the back seat. "He does." Jack glanced at her through the mirror. Claire almost smiled. It was the first moment between them that resembled anything from their marriage. It vanished quickly. Emma looked out the window. "I'm not trying to make things harder." Jack kept his eyes on the road. "I know. I just do not want another person deciding who I am supposed to be." Jack nodded. After a moment, he said, "I spent 21 years making every decision for Ryan because there was no one else." Emma looked at him. "It becomes a habit." He tightened his hands around the steering wheel. "That does not make it right." Emma said nothing. Then quietly, "Thank you." St. Matthew's stood between 2 glass office buildings, an old stone church surviving in a part of the city that had rebuilt itself around money. People were leaving when Jack parked across the street. Families, older couples, children in church clothes pulling at their parents' hands. Claire watched each face. Then she saw him. Daniel. A tall man with silver hair stepped down the church stairs beside an older woman. He kissed her cheek. She walked toward a parked car. Daniel remained behind, buttoning his coat. Rachel crossed the street first. "Mr. Cross." Daniel turned. He recognized her. Then he saw Claire. Every trace of color left his face. For 1 second he looked ready to run. Claire crossed the street. "Daniel." He stared at her. "My God." Rachel moved closer. "We need 5 minutes." Daniel looked around. "You should not be here." Jack stepped beside Emma. Daniel noticed her. His eyes stopped on her face. Claire saw recognition. "You know who she is?" Daniel's throat moved. "Claire, you know." Daniel looked towards the parking lot. "Not here." They moved into a small coffee shop 2 blocks away. Daniel chose a table near the back. He kept his coat on. Ryan placed the vault photograph in front of him. Daniel looked at it. His face gave them the answer before his mouth did. "You took the trust." Daniel folded his hands. "I removed it." "Why?" He looked at Claire. "Thomas asked me to." Claire leaned forward. "When?" 11 years ago. Thomas disappeared 16 years ago. Daniel nodded. "He left instructions." Rachel watched him carefully. "What kind of instructions?" "If the family vault remained secure, I was to leave the document alone. If anyone connected to Victor began asking about Henry's estate records, I was to move it." Ryan frowned. "Who started asking?" "Victor's general counsel." "When?" 11 years ago. Emma looked at Daniel. "So where is it?" Daniel remained silent. Jack felt his patience disappear. "That document is the reason Victor is trying to move the company tonight." Daniel looked at him. "I know." "Then answer her." Daniel's eyes moved toward the window. Cars passed outside. People laughed near the counter. Normal life continued a few feet away. Finally, Daniel spoke. "I cannot." Emma stared at him. "Cannot or will not?" Daniel met her eyes. "Both." Ryan leaned back. "Victor owns you." Daniel's face tightened. "You have no idea what you are talking about." Ryan laughed quietly. "I've spent 3 nights tracing shell companies you signed off on." Daniel froze. Ryan continued. "Briar Capital, Southridge Consulting, Meridian Strategic Holdings." Daniel said nothing. "Your signature is everywhere." Daniel looked toward Rachel. "Is this an interrogation?" Rachel answered calmly. "No, if it were you would have counsel." Daniel pushed his chair back. Claire spoke before he could stand. "Did my father trust you?" Daniel stopped. Claire's eyes did not leave his. "Did he?" Daniel slowly sat back down. "Sometimes." "More than Victor?" Daniel looked at her. "Yes." Claire leaned forward. Then why are you still protecting him? Daniel's expression changed. For the first time, something beneath the fear appeared. Shame. You think I woke up one morning and decided to become this? Claire said nothing. Daniel looked down at his hands. It happened slowly. His voice grew quieter. One adjustment in a report. One transfer I told myself was temporary. One account I chose not to question. Ryan watched him. Daniel continued. You make enough small compromises and eventually there is no clean place left to stand. Jack had heard men talk that way before. Not about crimes, about marriages, drinking, debt, lies. People rarely destroyed their lives in one decision. They did it in pieces. Daniel looked at Emma. Victor has records with my name on them, enough to make me look like the architect of everything. Were you? Ryan asked. No. Were you innocent? Daniel did not answer. That was answer enough. Rachel took the photograph back. Board meeting starts at 10. Daniel's eyes lifted. How do you know that? We know. The sale vote will happen before midnight. We know that too. Daniel rubbed his forehead. Rachel stood. You have a choice. He laughed without humor. People say that when they are not the ones facing prison. Rachel looked at him. You may face prison either way. Daniel stared at her. Rachel continued. The difference is whether you enter the room as Victor's accomplice or as a cooperating witness. Daniel looked toward Claire, then Emma, then Jack. Leave me alone. Claire's eyes hardened. Daniel, please. He stood. I said leave me alone. Then he walked out. Emma watched through the window as he disappeared into the evening crowd. That went well. Ryan exhaled. He knows where the document is. Rachel gathered her folder. Yes. Jack looked at the clock. 7:48. What do we do? Rachel answered. We go to the board meeting. Whitmore Meridian Tower rose above downtown Charlotte in black glass and white stone. By 9:30, the lobby was nearly empty. Security guards stood beside the elevators. Jack walked through the revolving doors with Claire, Emma, Ryan, and Rachel. The guard at the front desk looked at Claire's identification, then at Claire, then back at the screen. His expression changed. Ma'am? Rachel stepped forward. Rachel Lawson, counsel for Emma Hale. The guard looked uncomfortable. I have instructions. From whom? I cannot let Ms. Mercer upstairs. Claire almost laughed. Because I am dead. The guard did not answer. Rachel placed documents on the desk. This is a sworn statement challenging the death certificate. The guard shook his head. I am sorry. Jack looked toward the elevators. Call someone who can make the decision. A voice answered behind them. I already have. Victor Whitmore approached from the far side of the lobby. 2 board members walked behind him. He seemed entirely at ease. He looked at Claire first, then Emma, then Jack. Still collecting strays, Mercer. Jack stepped forward. Rachel touched his arm. Victor smiled. Good counsel. Rachel said, the board cannot vote on the sale while beneficial ownership of the controlling shares is disputed. Victor looked at her. The ownership is not disputed. Rachel lifted the trust copy. It is now. Victor glanced at the paper. A photocopy. Supported by DNA. Private testing. Supported by evidence of fraudulent death records. Victor's smile weakened. And an emotionally compromised mechanic. Jack stared at him. Several more board members entered the lobby. Victor raised his voice slightly. Mr. Mercer appears to have confused grief with opportunity. Jack felt every eye turn toward him. Victor continued. A woman claiming to be his dead wife appears with a young woman claiming to be his daughter, and suddenly he develops an interest in a multi-billion-dollar company. Emma stepped forward. No. Victor looked at her. She held his gaze. This is what happens when lies meet a deadline. The lobby went quiet. Victor's smile disappeared. One of the board members, an older woman named Margaret Bell, approached Rachel. What exactly are you asking? Delay the vote until ownership is determined, Victor answered for her. There is nothing to determine. Rachel opened another folder. We have a laboratory-certified paternity report. We have documentation showing letters sent by Claire Mercer were diverted to storage facilities controlled by Whitmore-affiliated security contractors. We have evidence that records connected to Claire Mercer's death were altered. We have transaction histories involving pension funds and shell companies. Ryan handed over several pages. Margaret read the first sheet. Her expression changed. Victor stepped closer. "Margaret." She looked at him. "We should hear them." Victor's jaw tightened. The elevators opened. At 10:12, Jack entered the Whitmore boardroom for the first time in his life. The room was longer than his entire garage office. A polished table stretched beneath recessed lights. Charlotte glittered through floor-to-ceiling windows. Jack looked down at his work boots. He had wiped the oil from them before leaving Asheville. Not all of it had come off. He decided he did not care. Claire stood beside him. "This room used to terrify me." Jack looked at her. "You were a kid. So were you when you married me." He almost smiled. Almost. Victor took the seat at the head of the table. Board members settled around him. Emma remained beside Jack. Rachel placed documents in front of each director. Ryan connected his laptop to the conference display. He walked them through the shell companies. Not dramatically, precisely. Dates, transfers, repeated addresses, identical directors. Millions moving from employee retirement funds into entities later dissolved. One director interrupted. "Are you accusing this board of theft?" Ryan answered. "No." He changed the screen. "I am showing you accounts this board was told did not exist." Silence. Victor leaned back. "Interesting theater." Rachel placed Claire's intercepted letters on the table. "Not theater." Claire spoke about the falsified death records. She did not dramatize her disappearance. She admitted the parts that made her look bad. She admitted refusing formal protection. She admitted hiding too long. That honesty made Victor's attempts to paint her as manipulative less effective. At 11:12, Victor finally placed both hands on the table. "None of this establishes that Ms. Hale owns a single share." Rachel held up the photocopied trust. "This does." "No." Victor's voice remained calm. "A copy establishes that someone had access to an old document." Rachel looked at the board. "The original was removed from a Whitmore-controlled bank vault 11 years ago." Victor smiled. "And you do not have it." That was the problem. Everybody in the room knew it. Jack looked at the digital clock near the wall. 11:18. Emma leaned toward him. "What if Daniel does not come?" Jack looked at her. "Then we use what we have. It might not be enough." "No." Emma swallowed. Jack lowered his voice. "You still walk out of here, my daughter." She looked at him. Something in her face changed. The boardroom disappeared for a second. So did the money. The trust. Victor. All that remained was a young woman who had spent 20 years believing one parent was dead, and a man who had spent 21 years never knowing she existed. Emma looked down. "That is easy for you to say." "No." Jack's voice softened. "It is the hardest thing I have said all week." Across the table, Claire watched them. At 11:27, Victor called for the final sale documents. A corporate attorney entered carrying several binders. Rachel stood. "You cannot approve this transaction while the ownership issue remains unresolved." Victor looked at her. "I can and I will." Margaret Bell frowned. "Victor." He turned. "We have delayed enough." Another board member spoke. "Perhaps waiting until morning would be prudent." Victor's calm cracked. "Morning changes nothing." Ryan looked at him. "Then why are you so desperate to finish tonight?" The question hung in the room. Victor said nothing. The board members looked toward the clock. 11:31. The doors opened. Daniel Cross walked in. No one had called him. No one spoke. Victor stood. "Daniel." Daniel did not look at him. He carried an old leather briefcase. He walked to the table and set it down. Victor's voice sharpened. "What are you doing?" Daniel opened the case. "I am finished." He removed a thick document bound with faded blue ribbon. Claire inhaled sharply. Rachel stepped closer. Daniel placed the document on the table. Henry Whitmore Family Trust. Victor's face changed. For the first time since Jack had met him, he looked afraid. Daniel looked at Claire. "Thomas told me to move it if Victor's lawyers began searching the old estate." Claire touched the cover. "My father's signature. Original." Rachel examined the seal. Daniel removed another folder. "These are internal pension ledgers." Ryan took them. His eyes widened. Daniel continued. Transfer authorizations, correspondence, instructions from Victor's office. Victor stared at him. You idiot. Daniel finally looked at him. Probably. Victor stepped forward. You signed those transfers. I did. You approved the reports. I did. You think walking in here with a box of paper saves you? Daniel swallowed. No. His hands shook. I do not expect it to. He looked toward the board. I spent 20 years telling myself I was protecting this company. His voice became quieter. I was protecting myself. Nobody interrupted. Daniel looked at Emma. Thomas believed your grandfather built a system that could survive one dishonest man. He glanced toward Victor. He underestimated how many cowards that man would need. Victor moved toward him. Security stepped between them. Daniel took a breath. I was one of them. The confession landed harder than a denial ever could. By 11:43, Rachel had confirmed the trust language. At 21, Claire's surviving biological child became beneficiary of the controlling voting interest. Until that moment, Victor's stewardship remained valid. He still had 16 minutes. Victor knew it. He looked at the clock, then toward the board. I call the sale vote. Margaret stared at him. You cannot be serious. I am chairman. For 17 more minutes, Ryan said. Victor ignored him. He distributed the resolution. Emma stood. Victor looked at her. Walk with me. Jack stepped forward. Emma touched his arm. I am okay. Victor led her toward the glass wall overlooking Charlotte. The rest of the room watched from a distance. He spoke quietly. You think I am offering you money? Emma said nothing. I am offering you responsibility. She looked at him. Victor gestured toward the city. Thousands of employees, factories, distribution centers, families. You stole their pensions. Victor's jaw tightened. I moved capital. You stole it. Words are easy when you have never run anything. Emma held his gaze. Victor lowered his voice. If this company collapses under scandal, people who never met me lose jobs. Emma said nothing. If federal investigators freeze accounts, suppliers stop getting paid, contracts die, retirement plans lose value before anyone restores a cent. For the first time, Emma did not hear a lie. Not entirely. Victor saw that. Approve the sale. She stared at him. Keep the company intact. Take your inheritance privately. Let me resign in 6 months. And the pension money? I restore it over time. You mean hide it? I mean protect thousands of people from your desire to make a moral statement. Emma looked across the room. Jack stood beside Claire. Ryan beside Rachel. Daniel sat alone. Everybody had made decisions in the name of protecting someone. Her mother, Jack, Thomas, Daniel, Victor. Some had been acts of love. Some had been acts of fear. Some had become excuses. Victor leaned closer. You can burn this company to the ground tonight and call yourself righteous. Emma looked at him. But innocent people burn too. The clock read 11:52. Emma returned to the table. Jack studied her face. What did he say? The first true thing he has said to me. Jack frowned. Emma sat down. Victor called the vote. 3 directors supported the sale immediately. 2 opposed. Margaret hesitated. Victor needed 1 more. The corporate secretary looked at the clock. 11:57. Jack could hear his own heartbeat. Rachel reviewed the trust again. Ryan stared at the pension ledgers. Claire watched Emma. No one spoke. 11:58. Victor leaned toward Margaret. You know what uncertainty does to markets? Margaret looked at Emma. Emma said nothing. 11:59. Victor raised his hand. Call the vote. Rachel stood. Objection. Noted. The secretary began reading the resolution. Jack watched the seconds change. 54, 55, 56. Emma looked at Jack. He looked back. 57, 58, 59. The clock changed. 12 Alndro. Rachel closed the trust. Stop. Victor froze. The secretary looked toward her. Rachel spoke clearly. Emma Hale is 21 years old. Nobody moved. Rachel placed 1 finger on the relevant clause. Under Article 7, Victor Whitmore's temporary stewardship terminates upon the 21st birthday of Claire Whitmore Mercer's surviving biological child. Victor stood. This is absurd, Rachel continued. Control of the 51% voting interest transfers immediately. Victor looked toward the corporate counsel. The attorney had already started reading. His face told Victor everything. Emma stood slowly. The room changed. Not because she looked powerful. She looked terrified, but she stood anyway. Margaret moved from her chair. Miss Hale. Emma looked at the seat at the head of the table. Victor was still standing beside it. For several seconds, neither moved. Then Victor stepped away. Emma did not sit. She placed both hands on the table. My first decision is to stop the sale. The corporate secretary nodded. Victor stared at her. Emma continued. Preserve every server. Ryan looked up. Every account, every email, every pension file, no documents leave this building. Rachel watched her carefully. Emma took a breath. Turn all relevant financial records over to federal investigators. One board member shifted nervously. Victor laughed. You have no idea what you are doing. Emma looked at him. Maybe not. He stepped closer. You have no idea what you inherited. Emma's eyes moved toward Claire, then Ryan, then Jack, finally back to Victor. Maybe not. Her voice steadied. But I know what I will not become. Victor said nothing. Security waited near the door. Emma looked at Daniel. Can the employee pension accounts be separated from the rest of the investigation? Daniel nodded slowly. With independent oversight? Then do it. She turned toward Margaret. I want outside auditors. Margaret nodded. Independent counsel, too. Rachel said, I can recommend firms that have never represented Whitmore Meridian. Emma looked toward Victor. For 21 years, everyone made decisions because they were afraid of what you could do. Victor's face hardened. Emma did not raise her voice. I am done being afraid. Security approached him. Victor looked at Claire, then Jack. His eyes finally settled on Emma. For a moment, he seemed older. Not defeated, just smaller. He picked up his coat. No dramatic threat, no shouting, no final speech. He walked out through the boardroom doors. The doors closed behind him. Only then did Emma release the breath she had been holding. Her knees weakened slightly. Jack reached for her arm. She steadied herself. I am okay. I know. She looked at him. Jack smiled faintly. Does not mean I cannot stand here. Emma looked at his hand on her arm, then toward the empty chair Victor had left behind. She did not sit in it. Instead, she walked toward the windows. Below them, Charlotte continued moving. Cars crossed intersections. Office lights flickered. People who would never know how close their retirement money had come to disappearing were still awake somewhere in the city. Claire joined Emma. Ryan stood on the other side. Jack remained a few feet behind them. For the first time since the station, no one was running, no one was hiding, and no one in that room had to pretend the dead were still buried. The silence inside the boardroom lasted almost a full minute after Victor left. Nobody seemed to know what shape the night was supposed to take now. For years, Victor Whitmore had occupied every room as if the building itself belonged to him. His absence felt almost physical. Emma stood near the windows with Jack on one side and Claire on the other. Ryan remained at the table with Rachel reviewing the documents Daniel Cross had brought. The city below continued moving as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Traffic lights changed. Cars turned through intersections. Office windows went dark floor by floor. Jack looked at Emma. Her face was pale. You need to sit down. I'm fine. You are shaking. She looked at her hands. He was right. She sat. Claire reached for the chair beside her, but stopped before pulling it out. Emma noticed. You can sit. Claire did. It was a small permission, but Jack saw how much it meant. Rachel approached with a stack of documents. We need formal resolutions tonight. Emma looked tired. What kind of? Preservation orders. Outside counsel. Independent audit authority. Emma rubbed her forehead. I have been 21 for 12 minutes. Ryan looked up from the table. That is still technically more experience than you had at 11:59. Emma stared at him, then laughed. It was the first real laugh Jack had heard from either of his children since this began. Ryan smiled too. For a few seconds they looked less like victims of an inheritance dispute and more like siblings. Rachel placed the paperwork down. We can keep this simple tonight. Emma nodded. No money leaves the pension accounts. Good. No records disappear. Good. No one who reported to Victor controls the investigation. Rachel nodded. And Emma looked toward Daniel. He sat at the far end of the room with both hands folded in front of him. You cooperate. Daniel met her eyes. I will. Even if it hurts you? He swallowed. Yes. Emma looked back at Rachel. That is enough for tonight. By 3 in the morning, the board had appointed interim independent oversight. By sunrise, federal investigators had been contacted. By noon, Whitmore Meridian released a public statement confirming an internal investigation into historical pension transactions and the temporary removal of Victor Whitmore from all executive authority. Jack read the statement on his phone while standing outside a diner with Ryan. The words were careful, legal, cold. They did not mention the anonymous letters, the grave, the photographs, the years Claire spent hiding. They did not mention a 3-year-old boy asking whether his mother was coming home. Ryan folded his arms. That is it. For today. It sounds like someone misplaced a receipt. Jack put the phone away. Companies do not write statements like people. Ryan looked at him. What do they write like companies? Ryan almost smiled. They walked inside. Claire and Emma were already seated in a booth. Rachel had gone home after promising to call before noon. Daniel had stayed behind with investigators. Jack slid into the seat across from Claire. There was coffee on the table. Nobody knew what to say. Emma opened a menu. So what happens to Victor? Ryan answered. That depends on what federal investigators find. Claire looked at him. They will find enough. Ryan glanced toward her. It was not warm, but it was not hostile either. That was new. Emma stirred sugar into her coffee. What happens to the company? Claire answered. That is your decision. Emma stopped stirring. No. Claire frowned. No. Emma looked up. I am not becoming chief executive because someone wrote my name into a trust before I was born. Claire seemed relieved. Jack noticed. Emma continued. I will keep the voting rights long enough to make sure Victor cannot come back. Ryan nodded. Smart. Then I want independent people running the company. Claire looked at her daughter. What about the pension money? Emma's expression hardened. That comes first. Ryan looked down at the table. For the first time, Jack saw something almost like pride on his face, not toward the company, toward Emma. The waitress arrived. 4 plates, eggs, toast, bacon, normal food in a normal diner after an impossible night. Jack looked around the table. Claire, Ryan, Emma. For 21 years he had imagined what family might have looked like if Claire lived. He had pictured birthdays, Christmas mornings, college visits, arguments over curfews, Claire complaining that Jack spoiled Ryan, Jack complaining that Claire worried too much. He had never imagined this. 4 people sitting beneath fluorescent lights at 6:30 in the morning, exhausted, angry, unfinished. It was not the family he lost. It was something else. That mattered. Weeks passed. Victor was formally suspended as chairman. Federal prosecutors opened investigations into pension fraud forgery, obstruction, and conspiracy. Whitmore Meridian froze several executive accounts. Outside auditors began reconstructing years of transactions. Some money was gone. Some had moved through offshore entities. Some sat inside properties Victor thought no one would trace. Ryan helped the independent forensic team during the first phase. He did not do it for Claire. He did not do it for Emma. He told Jack he did it because numbers had memories even when people lied. Jack understood that. Machines had memories too. Metal carried stress. Bolts remembered pressure. Engines told you where damage had happened if you knew where to look. Daniel became a cooperating witness. He did not escape consequences. Rachel made that clear, but he gave investigators names, account numbers, emails, internal instructions. Several executives resigned. 2 began cooperating before anyone asked. Victor's empire did not collapse in one dramatic moment. It came apart the way it had been built, one document at a time, one signature, one frightened person deciding loyalty was no longer worth the cost. The pension recovery took longer. Emma refused to authorize any family distribution until employee accounts were stabilized. Some board members objected. She told them they were free to resign. 2 did. She did not replace them with relatives. Claire refused every suggestion that she take an executive role. One afternoon, Emma asked her why. They were sitting on the back steps of Jack's garage. Claire looked toward the road. "I spent half my life running from that family." "That is not an answer." Claire smiled faintly. "You sound like your father." Emma waited. Claire sighed. "I do not trust myself with it." "The company, the power." Emma looked surprised. Claire continued, "I spent years telling myself Victor was different from me. Maybe he was." She folded her hands. "But I know what fear made me capable of. I made choices for everyone because I believed I knew what danger looked like." Emma looked down. Claire's voice softened. "I do not want another room full of people obeying me because my last name is Whitmore." Emma nodded slowly. "Then what do you want?" Claire looked through the open garage doors. Jack was beneath the hood of an old Pontiac. "I want ordinary things." Emma followed her eyes. "Coffee." Claire smiled. Coffee would be a start. Ryan's relationship with Claire changed more slowly. For the first month, he answered almost none of her messages. Claire did not complain. She sent one letter, not email, not text, a real letter. Ryan left it unopened on his kitchen counter in Atlanta for 2 days. On the third night he opened it. The letter did not ask for forgiveness. Claire did not explain herself again. She wrote about small things. The first time Ryan laughed as a baby, how he hated carrots. How Jack used to carry him around the house at 2 in the morning because he refused to sleep anywhere else. Claire admitted she had missed entire versions of him. Not just events, versions. 5-year-old Ryan, 12-year-old Ryan, 17-year-old Ryan, people she could never meet. Near the end, she wrote one sentence. "I do not expect you to call me Mom, but I would like the chance to know the man you became." Ryan read it twice. He did not reply that night. 4 days later, Claire's phone buzzed while she sat alone in her small rented apartment in Asheville. "Thursday, 7, dinner. Do not make it weird." Claire stared at the message, then laughed through tears. Dinner was awkward. Ryan arrived 5 minutes late. Claire arrived 20 minutes early. They spoke about work, Atlanta traffic, Jack's garage, Emma's classes. Nothing important. That was why it mattered. When the check arrived, Claire reached for it. Ryan stopped her. "I invited you." Claire looked at him. "You do not have to pay." "I know." He took the bill. Claire smiled. Ryan looked uncomfortable. "Please stop looking at me like that." "Like what?" "Like I am doing something heroic." Claire lowered her eyes. "Sorry." He paused, then said, "Next Thursday." Claire looked up. Ryan did not smile, but he had asked. Jack and Claire were harder. There was history between them no trust document could clarify. Some nights they spoke for hours. Other nights, Jack could barely look at her. He learned where she had lived. Maine, Virginia, Tennessee. He learned Emma had taken ballet for 2 years and hated it. He learned Claire still woke at the sound of unfamiliar cars. Claire learned Jack had kept her coffee mug. She found it one morning beside the sink. White ceramic, blue flowers, a chip along the rim. She touched it. Jack walked in. Claire looked at him. "You kept this." Jack poured coffee. "I did not know what else to do with it." Claire ran one finger along the edge. "I thought you would throw everything away." "I thought about it." "Why didn't you—" Jack looked at the mug. "Because being angry at a dead person felt stupid." Claire lowered her eyes. "I'm not dead." "I know. That was the problem." Months passed before Claire asked the question. They were sitting outside the garage after closing. The sun had dropped behind the trees. Jack held a cup of coffee. Claire sat beside him. "Do you think there is anything left?" Jack knew what she meant. He looked at the ring on his hand. He had worn it for 21 years. Not because he believed Claire was coming back, because taking it off had felt like admitting the marriage ended in fire and water. Now Claire was sitting 6 inches away. Alive, older, different. Jack removed the ring. Claire's breath caught. He turned it between his fingers. "The marriage we had ended 21 years ago." Claire looked down. Jack continued. "I loved that woman." Claire's eyes filled. "I know. I do not know you yet." She nodded. "That is fair." Jack placed the ring inside his shirt pocket. Claire looked at him. "If there is anything between us now," he said, It cannot be us pretending those years did not happen. I do not want to pretend. No secrets. No disappearing. Claire gave a sad smile. No. Jack looked toward the garage. Claire waited. Finally she asked, "What does starting over look like?" Jack thought. "Coffee tomorrow." Claire laughed softly. "Coffee? At 10? I can do 10. Jack looked at her. "Do not be late. I will try. You were always late." Claire smiled. "You remember?" "Unfortunately." That was how they began again. Not marriage, not forgiveness, coffee, then dinner, then a drive toward Lake Lure that neither finished because Claire asked Jack to turn around halfway there. He did. No questions. Later, she explained, Jack listened. That became their new rhythm. 1 year after the night at Whitmore Meridian, Mercer Classic Auto had changed very little. The sign was new. The roof had finally been repaired. Jack had hired another mechanic. The old wooden toolbox remained in his office. He never restored it. The scratched surface and hidden compartment stayed exactly as they were. Some things did not need to look new to remain useful. Emma spent part of her school break in Asheville. She refused a Whitmore Company internship. Instead, she took a summer job at the garage. Jack paid her the same hourly rate as anyone else. She complained. "Technically, I own part of a multi-billion-dollar company." Jack handed her a broom. "Technically, you still missed a spot." Emma rolled her eyes. She was terrible at changing oil. She dropped sockets. She left fingerprints on polished paint. But one afternoon, Jack started a restored 1969 Mustang. Emma looked up from across the garage. "Timing is off." Jack turned. "What?" She walked closer. "Something sounds wrong." He listened. The engine idled. Jack adjusted one setting. The sound changed. He looked at Emma. She shrugged. "What?" "Nothing. You are staring." "Your grandfather could hear that too. My Whitmore grandfather." Jack shook his head. "Mercer." Emma smiled. It stayed with Jack the rest of the day. Late afternoon sunlight poured through the open garage doors. The Mustang sat finished beneath the shop lights. Deep paint, clean chrome. An engine Jack had spent months rebuilding. Emma stood beside it, wiping her hands on a rag. "Are you ever actually going to drive this thing?" Jack tossed her the keys. She caught them. Her eyes widened. "No. Take it around the block. You do not let anyone drive this." "I know." Emma looked at the keys, then at Jack. She caught his reflection in the Mustang's rearview mirror. Gray eyes, the same eyes. For a year she had called him Jack, sometimes father when speaking formally, never anything else. She opened the driver's door, then stopped. "Dad?" Jack froze. The word was quiet, almost uncertain. Emma looked embarrassed. "Is that okay?" Jack set down the wrench in his hand. For 21 years he had believed grief was about learning to live with what never came back. Now he understood something different. Some things did not return the way you remembered them. Sometimes they returned older, wounded, changed beyond recognition. Sometimes they stood in your garage holding car keys and waiting to know whether one word could belong to them. Jack smiled. "Yeah." Emma watched him. "Yeah, that is more than okay." She smiled. Claire appeared in the office doorway carrying 2 cups of coffee. She heard the last sentence. She stopped. Jack noticed her. Neither spoke. Emma slid into the driver's seat. Jack opened the passenger door. She frowned. "I thought you said I could drive." "You can." "Then why are you getting in?" "Because I restored this car for 20 months. Emma laughed. "You do not trust me." "I met you a year ago." "Dad." Jack paused. Emma grinned. He shook his head. "You are going to use that against me now, aren't you?" "Absolutely." Claire laughed from the doorway. Jack looked toward her. She lifted his coffee. "Drive safe." Jack climbed into the Mustang. Emma turned the key. The engine came alive. The sound filled the garage. Jack listened. Smooth, steady, whole. Emma looked over. "Ready?" Jack rested one arm against the door. "Whenever you are." She eased the Mustang forward. The garage doors stood open. Claire watched them pull into the evening light. Jack glanced at Emma. She was smiling at the road ahead. He looked through the windshield. For once he did not think about the years behind them. He did not think about the lake, the funeral, Victor, the letters that never arrived. He did not think about what could have been. The Mustang turned onto the road. Emma laughed as the engine climbed. Jack smiled. And behind them, Mercer Classic Auto, filled with the ordinary sound of a family that had stopped trying to recover the life it lost and finally begun living the one that remained.